In this video, we are talking about integers. So far in math, right, everything we've dealt with has been with whole numbers. Now we've also had positive numbers, right, when you're working with fractions and decimals that aren't whole numbers, but everything has been positive. Well, actually, there are also a whole set of negative numbers, right? And so every whole number has an opposite negative number. So for example, the opposite of 1 or positive 1 would be negative 1. And the opposite of 5 would be negative 5. The opposite of 20 would be negative 20. The opposite of 1,300 would be negative 1,300, right? Every single whole number has an opposite negative whole number. And this whole set of numbers, so all positive and negative whole numbers, are a set of numbers that we call integers. So when we discuss integers, this is what we're talking about. A number that is whole that can be either positive or negative. Now, when we discuss integers, right, by saying the opposite of a number, right, so a negative number is the same distance away from 0 as its opposite positive number. So for example, if we were to say this is 2 here, right, you can see that that is a total of 2 numbers away from 0. So we know that its opposite, negative 2, is going to be the same distance from 0, just in the other direction. So we can see that's also 2 numbers away from 0. So these two numbers are opposites. Now let's look at a few examples of writing a number, or graphing a number rather, and its opposite on a number line. So if we wanted to graph 3 and its opposite, well, we can look here. If this point is 0, then we know this would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if we wanted to graph the number 3, that would be here. And if we want to graph its opposite, the opposite of 3 would be negative 3. So again, the same distance away, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, negative 5. So we know its opposite, the opposite of 3 would be negative 3. Okay, for another one, let's say we want to graph negative 4 and its opposite. So here's negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, and negative 5. So we can graph negative 4. And we know the opposite of negative 4 would be positive 4. So we can graph that here on our number line as well. Now there are some examples of how you might see integers used in a real-life context. So for example, if you were talking on a football field, right, you could talk about a certain play gaining 5 yards. So a gain is always going to be a positive number, right? If your team had the ball and they gained 5 yards, that would be a positive 5 yards. Whereas on the other hand, right, let's say your quarterback was sacked for a loss of 5 yards, we could represent that with the integer negative 5. So these words here, gain and loss, gain is associated with positive integers and loss would be associated with negative integers. Okay, another one you might see a lot has to do with banking or money, right? Some words maybe you're not familiar with, but we've got the word deposit, which is to put money into a bank. So let's say you deposited $100. You are adding $100 to the bank. That would be a positive 100. Whereas if you withdrew or you withdraw money, okay, or the noun that we use, a withdrawal, funny word to say, would be a negative $100. You're taking that out of the bank. One more example, often we'll talk about something being above sea level or below sea level. So that word above, we can see, would be associated with a positive integer, right? So we could say something started out 20 meters above sea level. That's a positive 20. And then maybe it ended up later on 20 meters below sea level, so negative 20, right? Where we could think of sea level as being 0. So positive 20 would be above that, and negative 20 would be below.